Hello and welcome to today's edition of Stockwatch. I am your host Luca, and today is Thursday, April the 8th, 2021, and today is part 3 of a 3-part series video podcast featuring the company BioSolar and its subsidiary. It's called NewHydrogen. The stock ticker for BioSolar is BSRC. And today's presentation, I'll be going over all of the patents that are in play and held by BioSolar. It is far more than what most people think. I'll also be discussing some exclusive licensing that they have in their books, as well as partnerships. I'll also be discussing how lithium-ion batteries are being modified to enhance their durability and their strength and their life cycle, and how different car manufacturers are teaming up with different companies to manufacture all these different mixtures of lithium-ion batteries. And I'll call that the battery wars. I'll finish up by talking about the future of the demand for hydrogen and the future of new hydrogen. So with that stated, let me go over a few quick disclaimers. The first being is that I actually hold a long position in BioSolar, which means I am a retail stock investor and I do own shares of BioSolar. I don't intend to sell them anytime soon. By the end of this presentation, you'll see exactly why that is. Second is that I'm not a financial advisor. The third is that all the opinions in this podcast are that of my own. And the fourth is that if you're going to invest in stocks or in the stock market, it does come with varied degrees of risk. So please make sure you understand all of these disclaimers as they are being presented prior to listening and or watching the podcast. So with that stated, let's go ahead and start the presentation. Okay, so the first chart, let me go ahead and narrate every chart and also describe what the visual of the chart is for those of you who are streaming this with audio and not able to actually see the charts. For those who can see it, it's fairly self-explanatory, but please do bear with me. So this first chart, I have a visual of some playing cards. There's 4 playing cards, and you can see their face value of each card, and each card represents an ace. And in part 1 and part 2 of this video podcast, I painted a picture that if BioSolar we're engaged in a game of chance. That's all card playing is a game of chance. That they have earned and they are holding nothing but aces. Now, that's easy for somebody to say. However, I like to always back up a statement. And so this visual has at the very top a headline that says $1 trillion bet on clean energy, and that's by the New York Times. And all that's referring to is that Joe Biden is very aggressive in initiating clean energy solutions for climate change, and he has been very focused to do so. And as he is proceeding in his presidency, all the other countries across the globe are also joining in this effort to alter climate change. And the biosphere has been also altered, and everyone wants to reverse the trend on what's going on with climate change. So this is all actually very good, of course, because it's similar to somewhat similar to the Industrial Revolution, except we're having a clean energy solution revolution. And in essence, on this visual, I have BioSolar's name and ticker, and underneath that it says that this company is nothing but a clean energy solutions company. And this is all true because they have research and development and patents in play, which I'll go over later in this presentation, in solar panel technology, R&D in silicon lithium technology, research and development in super battery technology, research and development in green hydrogen and the production of green hydrogen to make it affordable, cost effective. So wisdom states that they're definitely holding all aces. That stated, I'm going to move on to the next chart. This next chart has a couple visuals at the top of the page. To the left, we have a picture of Elon Musk, and to the right, we have a mound or a little mountain of lithium. and they both have headlines, and the remainder of the page from halfway to the bottom are headlines that are found on the internet. I'm just going to quickly discuss what these headlines say, and this chart is basically discussing that those who are in research development or conducting to manufacture modified lithium-ion batteries, they're at the right place in the right space at the right time. And this visual just reinforces that. The visual on the upper left corner basically has Elon Musk saying that Tesla will be manufacturing cars with a next generation battery. That next generation battery is, of course, a lithium-ion battery that has a mixture of some other element. It's an amalgamated or another battery that takes lithium with some other element. The other visual with the mound of lithium says lithium prices continue to soar, up 88% in 2021, and that was published on March the 15th of 2021. The remainder of the page, they have different headlines. I'm going to quickly read two. It says Tesla hit by battery shortage amid rallying lithium cobalt crisis. Tesla Semi may be delayed until 2022 due to battery shortages. And I'll go ahead and get to the next chart. This next chart will be recurring over and over again in this presentation, and it's under the category of battery wars. And battery wars is when we have the summation of all of these companies from across the world that are researching, developing, and bringing products to the market that will be considered to be these modified lithium-ion batteries. And there are, as I stated, different amalgams or different mixtures. So on this chart we have four types of different lithium-ion batteries. Solid state is one, iron lithium is another, silicon lithium is one more, and the last one on this chart is a supercapacitor, which is more of a supercell. I think that's the correct verbiage to use. It harnesses static electricity and then redistributes that energy. So it's not actual chemical reactions that are producing energy. It is more of static electricity. I do not come from a scientific background, so I apologize if that's not 100% correct to those who are scientists out there as well as engineers. Moving forward, the next chart has an image of Lamborghini, and this is again underneath the category of battery wars, and it says Lamborghini hybrid uses supercapacitors in place of batteries. Now the emphasis is to show car manufacturers and which battery science, which battery amalgam that they're very interested to pursue for their product lines. And of course, Lamborghini needs no introduction. Everyone in the world knows the name. But it is interesting that Lamborghini has got the blinders, or they're focused on supercapacitors. The next chart has General Motors, and General Motors is basically stating that GM is the latest company to team up with a battery startup in a bid to develop a solid-state vehicle battery. And once again, different manufacturers will be seeking out different technologies. So the emphasis here is that GM is very interested in pursuing solid-state batteries. From my understanding, solid-state batteries are not using like liquid chemicals. The battery is in a solid state. But again, I don't come from a scientific background. Let's move forward to the next slide. And this slide is from the Wall Street Journal, again under battery wars. And it states, the headline states, Elon Musk likes this EV battery and it costs less. Underneath that it says, iron-powered electric vehicles are surging in China. And we're going to move forward to the next chart. Now this next chart is a little different. There's no car manufacturer that is represented on this chart behind silicon anode batteries. Now BioSolar in 2020 had submitted a patent for a silicon anode battery, which is the chatter on the internet, which everybody is excited about and talking about. This specific chart is from a website, from a research company called Infor Research. And they have assembled a research paper and are selling it at $6,500 if you're an enterprise user, and for a single user, $3,500. Now, why that's interesting is because it's an extremely comprehensive research paper that specifies that silicon anode battery, the market for it, is astronomical, and it will be changing the way that lithium-ion batteries will be paved. So, within the contents of this paper, they provide some information. It says that they have strategic recommendations, trends, segmentation, use case analysis, competitive intelligence, global and regional forecast up to 2026. This is a very big deal, and we'll come back over it and analyze this entire market more in depth a little bit later. The next chart goes over United States companies, US-based companies, that have their hands in manufacturing silicon anode batteries. The silicon anode battery market is pretty much in its infancy, and within this list, again, there's 9 companies, all US companies. BioSolar is number 2. It's in alphabetical order. And what's interesting about that is that when you have a public company that especially is very good about filing SEC filings on time, correct, and with as much information and as much transparency as possible, is that a bad thing? No, that's a very good thing, because it shows that that company is responsible, it's on time, and they go to great lengths to make sure that investors are kept well abreast of whatever it is that they are trying to do. So with the other companies that are private, we don't know what we don't know, because there are no SEC filings. They're a private company. They don't have to deal with any of these regulations to file information with the SEC. So that does give BioSolar an advantage because they have 15 years of SEC filings, and one can read these SEC filings and understand that there's great details there, and BioSolar goes to great lengths to provide details for prospective investors. It's not to say that any of these other companies aren't pursuing to go public, but as of today's date, BioSolar is the only public one. As we move ahead, there on the next chart, there's a visual of a magician who's got a deck of cards and he's shuffling them from one hand to the next, and it says, "Let us examine BioSolar's hand and show how they truly are holding a hand of all aces by connecting all the dots." And the next chart has the sun, and it also has 8 planets in our solar system, and they're not motioning around the sun. They're actually all aligned next to the sun. So you see the sun, and then you see all the planets in the solar system that are completely aligned, and it's a very nice visual. And what I decided to do with this visual is to provide all the patents in play, talk about the exclusive license agreement that BioSolar has, and talk about their partnerships as well. Now, this chart probably is the most important chart in the entire deck for anybody who's interested in BioSolar, because it sheds light on their entire body of work. And in part 2, when I was going over their milestones, I withheld 2 very important milestones, and I'll tell you which milestones they are when I actually cross that bridge and come to it. That stated, let's quickly go over each of these dots and connect them. The very first one is when BioSolar had received a patent for their solar panel backsheet technology. It's actually a product. I shouldn't say technology, but the technology made the product. And that was granted in 2014. In 2014, they also started to work on supercapacitors, and I left this out intentionally in part 2. And so by 2016, they had filed the patents for their work with supercapacitors. In 2017, they wanted to get involved with lithium iron batteries, and they motioned to work with a university, and they did everything they could to make sure that they had access to this technology that was being built for this battery science, for this lithium iron battery. And so they had an exclusive agreement made for usage of this battery, and they did a development partnership for a couple years with this university, and they were very aggressive to make sure that they had their hands tied in with lithium iron batteries. In 2017, they formulated a partnership with a manufacturing company in Asia whose product line is nothing but batteries, lithium batteries, with a great array of different products in their product line. They cater to electric vehicles, and I believe they do lithium battery generated backup systems and things of that nature. At any rate, their name is called Top Battery, and in 2018, they contracted a partnership with Ferroglobe. Ferroglobe is the leading supplier of silicone, and they're based in Europe. And in 2020, we get to the silicone anode patent that they had filed with the U.S. Patent Office. And the chatter on the internet is everybody is interested in this patent. The chatter on the internet doesn't talk about the supercapacitor patent or anything else, and it is somewhat challenging to connect all of their body of work, which I've spent a great length of time to do so. You have to go through quite a bit of layers and layers of information and what I call overburden of data to assemble this. However, once it is assembled, you can see, once you're connecting all the dots, that BioSolar has been very, very hard at work, and they have thought in advance about this entire market for modifying lithium-ion batteries. Now, we get over to 2020, and this is another milestone that I purposely withheld from part 2, and they have a development partnership that they contract with a company called SoElect to develop solid-state batteries. Also in 2020, they have a development partnership with UCLA to produce green hydrogen and to sell that hydrogen at a cost-effective price. So they've been quite busy since they started in 2006 up till today's date. And let's move forward and see where the future really lies for this company. The next visual I have is of a baseball field. We all know what a baseball field looks like, and there's players on the field playing a game of baseball. And on every base, we see that the bases are loaded. On third base, there's a man. On second base, there's a man. On first base, there's a man. And of course, there is a batter at home plate who's ready for a pitch. We all know what happens if he gets a grand slam, which means the ball goes up and over a point where it's catchable, and every man on that base will come to home plate, when the bases are loaded. And it's very, very ideal in baseball to have this situation. And of course, the image is being used because when I click onto the next chart, it says with BioSolar, the bases are loaded and they're covered. Now I've tied in specific the patents that were in play from the other chart of the planets that were all aligned, and I have a specific patent for each man on each base. Starting off in third base, I have the supercapacitor patents that they filed in 2016 but started the work in 2014. On second base, I have the silicon iron lithium patents, and on first base, I have the silicone anode patent. And the batter, we have what we call a switch hitter, which is someone who can hit to the right or to the left, but is a lethal weapon. It's a powerhouse hitter, like Chipper Jones. We have two plays basically represented for this this individual, the batter. The solid state development partnership with SoElect and the hydrogen development partnership with UCLA. The main emphasis of this is just to reinforce the entire point that Biosolar is not just some company that has some silicone anode patent and that's all we're waiting on. Their entire body of their work is showing that their bases are completely loaded, and their bases are also covered if we go on the defense as well. Let's go to the next chart, which again is referencing the battery wars and the 4 different types of batteries that I had mentioned. Let's talk about the supercapacitor, and as we go on to the next chart, we'll see that chart of Lamborghini where the headline reads, Lamborghini Hybrid uses supercapacitors in place of batteries. Now, if I click ahead, the next chart has 3 headlines about Lamborghini, and the headline basically reads, Lamborghini and MIT are developing a supercapacitor. And what's interesting to note here is that all 3 of these headlines, they were published at different times, but they were all published in 2019, in the fall winter of 2019. And where I'm going with this is that both Lamborghini is an extremely impressive car company, so is MIT in terms of an academic institution of higher learning. They're probably the best tech school in the United States. And while that's all very impressive, Biosolar was well ahead of this curve. They started working on supercapacitors in 2014, 5 years ahead of time, before MIT and Lamborghini even intersected and crossed paths together. And while MIT is very, very impressive, Biosolar actually worked with a scientist by the name of Dr. Alan Heeger. I've clicked forward and I'm showing a small biography now on Dr. Alan Heeger. That's spelled H as in Henry, E-E-G-E-R. And Dr. Heeger has won the Nobel Prize in chemistry from the year 2000. When I had actually learned that Biosolar had worked with a Nobel Prize winning scientist as an inventor, that was a game changer for me personally. Many people often regard these companies that are penny stocks with a great degree of skepticism. They regard companies that are traded and their stock is traded over the counter or are labeled as OTC as being dodgy or fly by night. There are a lot of critics about companies that are trading in OTC. You do not get a Nobel Prize winning scientist to work with a small research company that is basically dodgy or fly by night. This was a complete game changer for me personally, and I was so impressed that they had Dr. Heeger working with them. And as time moved forward, I'm clicking to the next chart, we have the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office's website, and it shows that indeed Biosolar, which is their name, is right here, I'm pointing to it, and Dr. Alan Heeger, as well as other scientists, there's 3 other names here, all formulated to come together and had submitted a patent to the patent office for these supercapacitors. I'm going to click over to the next chart, and the next chart is showing an international patent for the supercapacitor as well, again with the same scientists and Biosolar. Whatever they were doing with supercapacitors from their time in 2014 to 2016, they were pretty aggressive if they're actually filing for a US patent and an international patent. So I find this all very, very interesting, and again, not too many people actually know about this, or the investors at the time were into this, but maybe they have long gone because nobody talks about this. But it is extremely, extremely interesting and should be raising a lot of eyebrows because they worked hard to get to this point. Now we're going to move on to the next chart, which again is referencing the 4 different battery sciences, technologies under battery wars. And we're going to talk about the iron lithium battery amalgam or mixture. And I'm using that chart again that came from the Wall Street Journal about Elon Musk, who likes this specific type of battery because it's cost efficient to use. And then the next chart is referencing a chart from part 2 of the video podcast, which shows Dr. Sung-Jin Cho, who led the University of North Carolina Agricultural and Technological University in conducting research for a silicon iron nanocomposite battery. And this chart shows that in 2017 he went to the U.S. Patent Office and filed what's called a provisional patent. And if you had watched part 2, and I'd already mentioned this, BioSolar, they were very aggressive in making sure that they were assisting Dr. Cho in this development of this battery. They had formulated an exclusive contract to use this patent because it was going to fall underneath, I believe, the university. And as we move forward in time, I'm going to go ahead and click to the next chart. We actually see on this next chart that this patent was granted by the U.S. Patent Office on December 29th, 2020. And so this is a very significant accomplishment by BioSolar. They opted not to actually talk about this with a press release. However, it's done. It's over, and it's an extremely, extremely large milestone for BioSolar. And Dr. Cho will be an instrumental scientist and person of interest when discussing BioSolar and its future. And I'll get to that in a couple of charts as to why. The next chart is referencing, again, the 4 different battery technologies under Battery Wars, and this time we're going to focus our attention to the silicon lithium or the silicon anode patents and batteries. And the next chart shows from part 2 of the podcast when BioSolar actually applied for this patent, and they put a press release out on 6/02/2020. That's what the visual basically shows. And the next chart, I tried to find information on this patent, could not do it, so I actually contacted BioSolar and said I can't find any information on this. And they said it was a provisional patent, and that's why. A provisional patent is like a rough draft, and you can't really find too much information on it. There's not much of a paper trail because it is a rough draft. It allows a company to supply their details to the patent office. However, it also safeguards their concept and idea. They don't have to kind of bear it all, so to speak. So I did talk to them, and they sent me confirmation that they had applied for this patent, the provisional patent. This visual that I have up is actually quite blurry, so the next slide is showing a much clearer picture of this receipt that I have gotten from BioSolar, which should be music to everyone's ears, and it certainly was to mine. The next visual is the visual that all the bases are loaded and covered, just reinforcing that in case you missed it, or in case you didn't believe that this company has really got all the bases loaded. And so we're going to move forward. Again, the Battery Wars chart comes up again with the 4 different types of battery chemistries and battery types. We're going to go and talk about the solid-state batteries now. And Dr. Sung-Jin Cho's biography comes up in the next visual from the second podcast. And I'm not going to read this, but basically his entire background and his career has been focused on lithium-ion batteries, their science, their technology, and their product production of such of lithium-ion batteries. So let's go ahead and click over to the next chart. And why Dr. Cho is coming up is because Dr. Cho has started a battery manufacturing company called SoElect. And then this next chart says that he's raised money for SoElect, and things become interesting. The next chart shows that he raised money for SoElect. Things become interesting because on March 6, 2020, SoElect and BioSolar contracted a development partnership to work on solid-state batteries. So now we have Dr. Cho, who he's getting a startup battery manufacturing company, plant, whatever you would like to call it, And things get very, very interesting from this point forward because of the relationship that BioSolar has with Dr. Cho for the ages or for the years that have gone by. So all very, very exciting for BioSolar. And now I'll begin to pivot and start talking more about where they're going with their hydrogen, with green hydrogen, and their news for changing their name to NewHydrogen, which is right now a subsidiary of BioSolar. So this next chart has a 6-month stock chart on BioSolar, and it shows that BioSolar had started to gain quite a bit of traction and momentum in December of 2020, upon which the price of the stock had started to rise, and then it dropped off a little bit, and then it skyrocketed and went to 16 cents, and then it's now trailing back down, and its current price as of April the 8th is 4.5 cents. Now, some discussion about this 6-month chart that's interesting is that we see that the market overall, when BioSolar had mentioned or had come out with a press release that they're getting into hydrogen, was well accepted with open arms, and it excited many investors, and that's what had initiated the stock to skyrocket. As it skyrocketed from 4.5 cents to 16 cents, what happened was at the height of this frenzy, BioSolar decided to submit a private offering. And when you have such a frenzy and a rally in the stock market, a lot of these private institutions, they get interested. What's all the hubbub about? And so a private institution shoulder taps BioSolar. They say, what's going on? They say, hey, this is what we're all about. And they said, you know what? We want to invest. Tell us more. So BioSolar shows them more. And then they close a deal. When you have a private offering, it's just par for the course. It's just normal for what happens in the cycle. Many investors don't like that, so they exit their positions. And we see the stock price actually had fallen. They close the deal, and then the price actually goes right back up to where it was at about 16 cents. And then we have a market correction at all the stock market indices. Nobody was no stock indice was actually left alone, and stocks across the board basically took a hit, and BioSolar, of course, was one of them, and that was for 6-7 weeks, and then the stock fell to 4 cents, and then it had risen to 8 cents, and again there was a lot of interest, and momentum was kind of dissolved again by BioSolar because they did another offering, and so they did 2 back-to-back offerings in 2021. And between January and April, and now the stock price is $4 and 4.5 cents. And what's going on is the next slide is asking, is BioSolar actually undervalued? Is this the right price for a company that has this body of work? All of these patents in play. It's not one patent that they have gotten in their hands and another patent that they're waiting on. They have far, far more than the average person actually understands, and I have presented that. My answer to this question is that BioSolar is grossly undervalued. We have short traders involved that decay a stock's price. That's in every stock that's above 2 cents. They work hard to bring down the price because they make money off of it. That issue in itself is going on with every stock. BioSolar is not excluded from that. You have the history that I just presented about the 2 back-to-back offerings, as well as the 7-week market correction. And I looked over at some of these private companies that are in silicone anode manufacturing. There's one company in particular, I won't mention their names, but they just had a body of work which was patents. They didn't have anything else. They were able to, they had 31 patents though, I should mention that. And they had gotten interest with private equity private equity interest, and they brought to the table $125 million of private equity money. And then they were given a valuation of $350 million, and they don't have anything, they haven't produced a product yet. I stripped all of this information and I did a comparative analysis, and my comparative analysis took their body of work with the 31 patents, and I had retained a base price for those patents, and I applied that to BioSolar, and I got that they should have a market cap or be worth 50 million bucks, and that's a very conservative framework that I used. I'm not going to show the math on that. I think I'll lose a lot of people if I do. However, I'm just reinforcing this question and answering it: is BioSolar undervalued? The answer is yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Now, on this stock chart, it shows what the trading was like on April the 8th, and I want to focus on a couple of variables here. I'm going to start talking about NewHydrogen in a minute, and then I'm going to bring in a couple of companies that are just doing hydrogen, and we're going to very much analyze to see where BioSolar and NewHydrogen specifically can go in the future. So let's go ahead and jump into that. The next chart has a visual of a commercial aircraft. They look like they're about 30 or 40,000 feet above sea level. And you can clearly see on the fuselage in very large fonts, it says zero emission aircraft, and then the manufacturer advertises itself, which is Airbus. And on the wing where the engine is, the turbine, it says hydrogen powered. So this is a very powerful image that just reinforces that hydrogen is in the works to go parabolic, to go to the moon, whatever you want to call it. It's not going out of style. It's just going to be more focused and in demand in the future as we get away from fossil fuels, as we get away from jet fuel, as we get away from using gasoline. So any of these companies that are now trying to figure out, let's produce hydrogen and do so and so that it's saleable to the market at a very cost effective price, they're positioned for success. This is if they can actually do it. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. If they're successful in what I'm specifying, then the stock price will it will rise very, very handsomely. And we're going to go ahead and do a comparison for that just to show everybody. Going back over to the day chart for April the 8th, the stock trading chart for BioSolar, we're going to focus on their market cap, which is just under 30 million, and their public float, which is the amount of shares that's available to retail investors or the general public. That's 585 million. So right now, the market cap tells everybody what's the value of this company. It changes from day to day. You take the public float and multiply that by whatever the stock is trading for the day, and you get your market cap. $30 million. And of course, I specify that right now their body of work at a conservative level should be a $50 million market cap. However, let's look at hydrogen companies that are just focused on hydrogen. Where are they? The first company I'm going to mention, and I'm not actually going to mention their names, I'm just going to show you the stock chart. I clicked over to the next chart. We have a new stock chart, and this company is trading just under 12 cents. And we're going to refer to their market cap and their public float. Their market cap is 385 million. By now, many people are probably very impressed by that compared to BioSolar, because BioSolar has just underneath the 30 million market cap. This company is just focused on hydrogen. They have nothing in terms of batteries at all, or nothing in terms of solar panel technology at all. All they have is, we're focused to produce hydrogen. We're on a trajectory, and we're on track to do so. And because of that, they have, through a limited amount of time, they haven't been doing it for 15 years or anything of that nature, they have a 385 million market cap. However, their public float is 3.31 billion. I don't want to get too involved with the technicals on how this all works, but I do have to mention some aspects of this. When you have a company that has a public float with this many shares, it's a matter of time before they want to cut those shares in half. When they do that, they're going to offer what's called a reverse split, and that doesn't fare well for retail investors. The short end of the story is that most retail investors, they'll split. They'll leave their positions, and the idea is good. The idea is to let's go ahead and cut the float in half. And how we'll do that, I'll just mention it real quick, is suppose you have 1,000 shares and the stock is actually worth 11 cents today, and they do a reverse split in the morning. You're going to have 500 shares, and your stock price is going to be valued at 22 cents before the market opens, or before pre-market. Now, that sounds great, but what happens is everybody leaves their positions, and the short traders come out of the woodworks, and they short this stock. The short volume comes in, and that 22 cents at 500 shares that you have actually falls back down to about, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 cents, somewhere in that range. A great idea, however, it always backfires with the nature of the beast of stock trading. So that is just something to look at in one way of playing the chess game for biosolar or NewHydrogen, with focus to what they're doing in hydrogen. The next company they pave the path of where biosolar can go. They shed nothing but aspirations of yes, you can, and shows all biosolar investors that if biosolar actually they leave that entire image of we've got 4 aces in our hand, that's a game of chance. Forget about the game of chance. Let's start playing some chess and play effective game of chess. This company went from 24 cents, which they were trading for a long period of time, and they focused to bring green hydrogen over to the market, and they accomplished that goal. They gave a specific plan, and they said, this is how we're going to produce green hydrogen, and this is how we're going to make money off of it and revenue off of it. And when you see stock charts that go from, they've been at one level and it's just 24 cents for a long period of time, and then it goes to the moon, and then it drops off like a cliff. What happens there is that was a surge in the stock price, and it never got to consolidate because value was never really added to that stock price in increments of time. So it's leveling up, slowly consolidating. That's extremely important to understand, because the successful companies that can build their stock, they add value to their stock by just telling everyone this is what our plans are, very, very point specific, and then presenting their status reports through press releases, and that just keeps on building more, adds more value to the stock, more investors come in, and this company did a majestically beautiful job and going from 24 cents to $6.53 as of April the 8th, 2021. And just prior to the market correction, the stock rose to $10. Now, it gets even better because their public float is only 354 million. They were very, very keen and smart to not make this public float billow out, swell on up, and just keep on getting these offerings, the public or private offerings that will take shares that they're going to have in a vault. Just pretend that they have all these shares that are just sitting in a vault, and they can cash those in, and once they cash those in for money, they're going to have to put the shares somewhere. If they put it in the public float, well, that float gets bigger, and then we don't want it to get up into the billions. And if they actually shelf it and give it to the institution in a separate account, which doesn't affect the public float, that's great. Now, biosolar has done that, which I give biosolar a lot of credit for. That's very smart. But the kicker here is that this company has a $3.49 billion market cap. And this company is showing every hydrogen company out there that there is room for growth and room to run if you can play the correct strategies in your chess game. The pawn can become a king. And so we move on from this chart. And nearly finished with the presentation. This next chart is going to just reference how much room there is for growth for NewHydrogen and currently biosolar. There's a visual on this page that's showing for the past 5 days, 1 month, 3 months, and year to date how the stock has performed and how the stock has performed from 1 year ago. And the gist is this stock, biosolar stock, is up 721% from a year ago and down 27% year to date. Now, for those who are skeptical, oh, this stock is run, oh, this is an OTC stock, the OTC argument really should not be even in the mix anymore. Their resume speaks loud and clear, and if someone is still skeptical about OTC, especially biosolar, well, then they need not go any further. However, the other type of investors that are skeptical that this stock has already run its course, it's already up too high, I cordially beg to differ, because the hydrogen company that I'm so happy to see and that has had so much success, they went up 2,620% gain when the stock is at $6.53, and when it was at $10 just 6-7 weeks ago in February, it was up 4,667% compared to biosolar's 721% it's up from a year ago. So this specific hydrogen company that has a successful model is envious because their market cap is in the billions of dollars. They added value to their stock. They did everything. They played the game so correct, and they were very careful not to dilute shares, and their outstanding shares are not in the billions, and their public float is not in the billions, which can prompt a reverse split. And of course, as I stated, that's not ideal for most retail investors. Now, I'll go ahead and finish off this chart by saying if biosolar and when biosolar stock goes above $1 and it trades for above $1 for more than 30 days, they can think about moving to NASDAQ. And once they do, this stock can go much further than $6. So it's very exciting for NewHydrogen. They will have access to Webull, Robinhood, and more retail money. And if they want to dilute shares or do shelf deals, they can do it with offering less shares for whatever money that they need. So with that stated, let's move forward, and I'm almost finished. I'll talk about the pros and cons about biosolar and wrap everything else up, and we're almost done. This next visual has a pawn, and its shadow is cast on this pawn, which is a king. And I've used this this king that sits on a chessboard, that piece, on the header of my presentations here for a reason, because I do believe that biosolar is positioned to be a king. It just depends on how they're going to play this chess game, and are they going to be effective to do so, or are they not? Now, if they want to be crowned a king and for the stock price to advance, they need to focus to have specific plans that ties patents to revenue, period. They need to make sure that the raised capital that they have in their hands is spent conservatively. You don't want them to go and keep on trying to get money from institutions. You don't want them to run to the ATM machine all the time. It's not healthy for the stock price and for morale for their retail investors. Just common sense. They need to add value to stock shares. That's very, very important. I've already presented how that's done with the hydrogen company that went from 24 cents to $10. They need to cut lucrative deals in the future and use verbiage such as LOI, which stands for letter of intents, pre-sales, purchase orders, because all this verbiage, it adds value and secures future revenue. They've been good about sharing progress. They need to share more progress and more details in terms of press releases. They need to tie patents to an end game and make sure their patents go to some type of production that generates revenue. And if they ever were to take more of a role in manufacturing, it equates to a mega market cap for NewHydrogen, currently biosolar. Clicking on to the next chart, it says caveat investor at the very top. Now we're going to talk about some negatives. It's not all peaches and roses with biosolar. And so let's be fair and really talk about some of their weaknesses. Caveat investor means investor beware. Now, this visual has 6 pawns that are in a circle, and a shadow is being cast, and so their shadows make up what looks to be a crown. And it's pretty simple to understand this. So will the pawn be crowned a king? Again, it just depends on how they move forward. Now, if they want to remain a pawn and for the stock price to not advance and it's just going to be a penny stock forever, they're going to focus on getting more money from institutions that will feed whatever fire that they have. They're not actually going to be adding value to the stock. And that is a pawn play. It kills the price action and momentum of the stock price. That's a pawn play. If they share broad and vague future plans, that is a pawn's play. This next bullet is in red. If they choose to ignore plans to generate earnings, which is their Achilles heel in my personal opinion, it's mediocre, it's a pawn's play, and it's their largest, greatest weakness. The report card is not an A+, it's not a 4.0, because they have failed, in my humble opinion, to have specific plans, and that hurts them. You can have any kind of progression, and you can have a patent in your hand, and then let's say it's very similar to real estate development. You can, if you're a real estate developer, you've got all these different projects. In one instance, you could have this great project, but it takes forever to get your permits. And by the time you do get it, years have gone by, and you've got this other project that it's just money in the bank. So you're going to shelf that other project that took a couple years to get the permits. These are real life applications in a real world with real business. So in the past, if they had any of these patents that for whatever reason they decided to shelve, it's my humble opinion that they should talk about that. They should let people understand that, because there's no shame in that. There's no failure in that. However, not knowing and keeping retail investors blind and not having specifics is not good, because then there's this uncertainty. The hydrogen company had no uncertainty. They made these claims, and analysts may have thought that they were bold claims, that we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're a 24-cent stock. So what? The proof is, at the end of the day, is have you accomplished your goals that you set out to do, and were you point specific about it? And again, I don't want to harp too much about this, but this needs to change with biosolar and NewHydrogen. It's great that they're working with UCLA. It's great that they have this focus. Show us exactly how it's going to generate revenue, because once you do that, this stock price is going to soar, soar, soar. Okay? So the next bullet says that if they want to basically remain a pawn, don't add value to the stock. If they want to remain a pawn, they'll do so by not providing updates on batteries. Again, I already emphasized this. It's okay if they want to shelf something in the past. We understand that they took a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of capital to do what they wanted to do, and they've accomplished that. But we do understand that things do come up in life where you have an opportunity right now that is going to be profitable. And that's the road to least resistance to retaining revenue and or profit. Great. Let everybody know, and everybody will be happy. And with that said, I'm going to click on to the next chart, which is showing, again, the most important chart in the entire deck, which is the sun with all the planets aligned with all of their body of work. I'm going to click on the button, and it says it's time to go to the moon, which is, if anybody is in biosolar and NewHydrogen, and after watching this presentation, if you're not impressed by their body of work, then you're not impressed. If you're skeptical that they're in the OTC, I guess you'll always be skeptical of the OTC. All right? It's kind of like college football. You don't have to be the University of Alabama or Auburn University in the SEC to win championship games. They have plenty of schools that are not in the SEC conference, which is considered to be the best conference in college football. That's an opinion, so it's not a fact. It's not the gospel. But again, I've already reiterated why this company is magnificent. It's an outlier. It's a strong candidate for success. And with that stated, that wraps up today's episode of Stockwatch Part 3, featuring BioSolar and its subsidiary, soon to be named and soon to be crowned NewHydrogen. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.